Hello, welcome to the Record Celtic podcast. My name is Daniel Coe. I'm delighted to be joined by Record Sports' Craig Swan. Swanee, how's it going?
How are we?
Very good, thanks. And the one and only Chris Sutton.
Hello, Daniel.
How are you?
Yeah, very good, very good. Yeah.
We're into international break. Do you like international break, or is it a bit of a...
It didn't really. Well, I used to enjoy them as a player because it often gave me a break. Daniel, I only got one cap.
You deserve so much more, Chris.
Yeah, well, just imagine if I was Scottish.
Oh,
just imagine that. I can see Swanee screwing his face up there.
it'd been you and Stevie Crawford up front under Bertie Vogts. That'd have been great.
You'd have got two cards.
Good player, Stevie Crawford was.
Very good. Good in his day, aye.
Yeah, I've enjoyed that.
It might be international break, Swanee, but there's still plenty of Celtic stuff for us to talk about.
Always, Daniel. Always. Never quiet at Celtic.
I think that probably the best place for us to start is the win over Kilmarnock. I mean, big win for Celtic, 8 goals in the last 2 domestic games, Chris. Martin O'Neill certainly had a very positive impact on Celtic's results.
Well, it certainly had a positive impact domestically. I think that that the defeat against Midtjylland was, the way that the team played. I mean, it was 3-1, but I mean, it could have been anything. It got to half time, and I've got to say, I was really fearing the worst. But I think that was, a game where it's better to judge this Celtic team when you think. I know you talked about. On the hotline, and that you think a year ago Celtic were in the Champions League demolishing Leipzig at home, and then different level to come down a level and to lose in the manner which they did against Midtjylland. And Midtjylland, listen, take nothing away from them, really well organised team, but they're a team which Celtic should certainly be competing better up against, and they didn't. But the Martin O'Neill effect, if you want to call it that, domestically, I mean, Celtic have had a little bit of a bounce, but in truth, if we're going to sort of talk plainly, they've beaten Falkirk well, which you'd expect them to, Celtic to do at home. Beaten a Rangers team who have been absolutely average this season, and Celtic had the numerical advantage for most of the game, and then beaten a Kilmarnock side who were depleted in terms of injuries, and I think Kilmarnock need to think about getting another goalkeeper in as well, because I don't think he was overly helpful for them. I know he's a young lad, but I mean, I think he should have done better, certainly with 3 of the goals. So look, I think there's positivity there from Celtic, but of course it's an interesting time, because it's what happens now. Is it going to be Martin and Sean until the end of the season? Well, there's a lot of speculation about a new manager coming in, isn't there?
We've talked about it a lot, Swanee, and obviously there's a few issues on the pitch that I wanted to get both your guys' take on. But as we've arrived at it, the Martin O'Neill question, what's your gut feeling? Do you think, as we sit here at the start of the international break, Martin O'Neill will be in charge for Celtic's trip to St Mirren?
I must admit, Daniel, when I saw him take in St Mirren against Hibs on Saturday night, given the fact that's Celtic's next 2 Premiership opponents, I did think that was looking likely. But speaking to him on Sunday, or listening to him speak after the game on Sunday, it didn't seem quite as clear-cut. Listen, I'm sure we're going to go into this in some depth about the importance of possibly getting a manager in quickly with the January transfer window and all of that stuff. Do I think Martin O'Neill will be in charge until the end of the season? No. Do I think Martin O'Neill will be in charge basically in January? No. But could he be in charge for St Mirren? Yes. I know that sounds like sitting on the fence, but I've made the point that if Celtic identify a guy that they want, I've made the point in other shows that we do, if it's Kjetil Knutsen and it's January because he wants to finish the Champions League, Celtic should wait for him. And if that means asking Martin O'Neill to continue in the role, now, I'm going for Martin. And Martin said that himself. That's not me being disrespectful. He's been plunged into this. He's charging all across Europe. It's been a very busy period. It's been tiring. He said himself, tiring. It would be an ask to go again through to Christmas because there's so many matches. But I think with Martin's connection to Celtic and the Liverpool club, I don't think he would let the gift. What I'm basically trying to say is if the club come to Martin and say, will you continue for a little while longer? I don't think he would say no. Now, Chris is better qualified than me to talk about that. He knows Martin. Well, he played for him, as everyone knows. So he'll probably answer that better than me. But I wouldn't think Martin would say no if he was asked to continue for a little short term longer, just until Celtic get it organised. But in an ideal world, Celtic will get this new manager tied down and quickly.
Chris, I wanted, just before you come in on that there, look, I'm going to declare myself. I get everything, but he's obviously an older guy now, Martin. It's Swanee spot on. It's so many games over, particularly over the festive period. And Chris, I heard you the other day on TV saying that, look, he might, there's a danger he could damage his legacy. But just personally, selfishly, I've loved having Martin O'Neill back on the touchline, and I love seeing him bouncing about. I would love the thought that perhaps there's another trophy, perhaps maybe even another league title in the Martin O'Neill story. I mean, am I being completely naive or?
No, you're being optimistic, and it's a possibility. But I've seen lots of stuff online about stuff I've said about the possibility of Martin damaging his legacy. I mean, and people saying, well, that would never happen. But let's get it right. If you're sort of deep into February and Celtic, don't win the League Cup, and there's St Mirren not doing particularly well in terms of their league position, but the physicality they have, if they get O'Hara fit and Gogic fit and back into the team, they can be a really awkward team on their day. Everybody knows the way that they play, but they can cause Celtic, numerous problems. But if you get sort of deep into February and Europe hasn't gone well, and there's the odd slip up in the league, which is a possibility. Let's not pretend Celtic are not out of the woods yet. It's been encouraging that the domestic form, but we know what football fans are like. They want their there's, especially in recent years, there's been this expectation going into every season Celtic are going to win the treble. That's what a large part of the fan base think, and that's the standards which Celtic have set in recent years. So if Celtic drop below those standards, then I'm sure Martin will come in for criticism, and that's just the way it is. And he's helped the club in their hour of need, coming in short term, but we know that the mood can change and it will change. And I'm not gonna pretend otherwise. I hope it doesn't. I just I love Martin. I love playing under him. He was always, I think, a lot of players, every player from that sort of generation would say how inspirational he was, and you'd run through a wall for Martin. But this is a different Celtic team to the one that he built, and it's miles off the level of the team which Martin built back in the day. And I think deep down he will realise that. He says all the right things, but I'm telling you, Thursday night in Midtjylland, he'd have been sat in that dugout thinking, blimey, great start as it's been, and what have you. And he's not going to talk the team down. Of course he's not. But he'd have been thinking, we are miles short. So I agree with Craig. If Martin's asked to stay on, I think he will do it. But I hope he's not asked to stay on long term until the end of the season. But what is important, and we've all got a different stances on this, is that the club make a decision and are decisive right now. And whether I agree with it or not, whether Martin and Jones should stay on to the end of the season, it will be better if that's the way they're going to do, just to say, right, we're going to do that, and everybody then can look forward and know what they're going to do. Of course, in terms of the January transfer window, that may be a bit of an issue, because if it's just Martin and Sean until the end of the season and Celtic aren't looking beyond that, then if players are brought in January, and Celtic 100% need players brought in January, I mean, the injury list is, crippling the club to, key players. Jota's not going to be there. Alistair Johnson's not going to be there. Cameron Carter-Vickers to the end of the season. So Celtic are going to have to move in January, and move smart and move quickly to give themselves the best possible chance of winning the league. But then you've got that sort of longer term outlook. If there's the change at the end of the season and a new guy comes in, is he, going to want to work with possibly some of the players who have been brought in January. So it's not straightforward, but for the good of the good of the team right now, and for the good of everybody, I think Celtic just need to act swiftly.
Swan, you mentioned before Knutson at Bodo Glimt, who is one name that keeps being linked. I think actually the bookies' favourites with a lot of bookies is Wilfred Nancy now. Do either of those names, or any other names for that matter, jump out to you guys? Is there anyone that is a beacon as, the best candidate for the job?
I think if you're asking me, I mean, obviously Wilfred Nancy is come to the fore over the past couple of days. I think obviously Columbus Crew went out of the MLS competition, so that's kind of the end of his season, which makes him available now, which obviously makes that attractive. He's had some success, obviously, across the pond. Knutson would be a standout for me. If that's the direction that Celtic are looking to go down the foreign coach road, and what he's done at Bodo Glimt has just been incredible. I mean, he's literally built that club up and made them in the European semi-finals. I think we're the first Norwegian team ever to make the last four major European competition, winning the league constantly, playing a style of football. Some really interesting stuff about him. The fact that he comes up against teams who play, if you want to go all hipster, against the low block. Bodo Glimt face that all the time. Apparently, he's brilliant. He's been an expert at getting his team to work that out, and so that's the kind of football that Celtic will face. Then he can clearly go into Europe when, with the greatest of respect to Bodo Glimt, they're probably going to be playing on the counter. They're probably going to be under, and he's managed to get results there. The problem, not problem, but I think we all know managing Celtic Football Club is a very different proposition to just being a good football coach. Now, I don't profess to know Kjetil Knutson particularly well, but I have been to Bodo Glimt. I have been to the town, small town. The guy's basically could be the president of the place for what he's done for that football club. He'd be carried shoulder high. He's absolutely loved. He's not going to go to the garage, put petrol in his car, and be slaughtered by someone when he's doing it. You have to be a different type of person to manage Celtic or Rangers. I mean that in all seriousness. So I think there's two aspects to it. But in the football coaching side of it, I think he's an absolute standout for me anyway. But again, we come back to what Chris has touched on. Does he want to stay with Bodo? He's done so well to get them into the Champions League. You look at the fixtures that they've got coming up. You're surely going to want to see that through. Surely. Yeah. So then you come back to, okay, is that the guy they want? Okay, it's January then. Martin, will you do it to January? It just comes back to that indecision that Chris is talking about. How do you approach a January transfer window then? Does it just have to be a load of loan signings just to plug to the end of the season? That doesn't fit either. So, I don't know. It's all up in the air, as I say. Nancy and Knutson seem to be the two names that are coming to the fore.
I've got to say, I've been slaughtered in most establishments in and around Glasgow. Garages, pubs, restaurants.
Yeah, it's not exclusive to putting petrol in the car for you, Chris, is it?
Yeah, no, exactly. Marks and Spencer's put a bit of flack in there. I lived in Newton Ends. Yeah, so yeah. You've not made it. You've not made it, have you? Until you've been absolutely mullered at a petrol station.
That's about Daniel, where we're supposed to say other major clothing brands are available. Or something. So I just touting for another deal there somewhere.
It's interesting what what Craig says about Knutson, because we would probably all look at his track record and think that he would be Celtic would be better off going for him, looking at his track record. But it's like anything, when Ange Postecoglou came in, he took a lot of flack, didn't he? Because nobody had ever heard of him and dismissed his track record. I don't know how people would view Knutson's track record and what he's achieved at Bodo Glimt, but the fact that he's gone deep in European competitions before, I think, certainly would bode well. If Wilfred Nancy is the choice, then you've got to give him a chance, give him an opportunity. You both know my view on this. I think any manager taking over this current squad has the work cut out. They just do, because it's about the level of player, the standard of player which they're taking over. It's going to be interesting to see from now until January, another couple of games in the Europa, sort of how Celtic cope in that, and then the reaction from the fan base. But I think I think the truth is most Celtic fans are thinking, blimey, if we can just win one thing this season, it has to be the league. Take the league, and we just have to forget about Europe, because as much as everybody wanted to see progression this year in Europe, it doesn't really look like this squad is strong enough to be competitive at all.
It's funny. I mean, I know I'm stating the blindly obvious here as well, but I remember Swanee talking to you in pre-season, which was only a few months ago, and saying that this season Celtic are going to be going for a treble and progression in the Champions League. That's all there on the table. It's all there for them. And a few months later, they might not even win the league, and everyone's worried about them getting embarrassed in the Europa League. It's actually remarkable how far it's kind of done a 180. But I guess it has.
It is. Look, I mean, you're right. It is what it is, though. And Celtic are where they are. Change of manager, crippling injuries to the squad, and it's what happens next. And that's why I'm repeating myself now. But that's why Celtic have to be decisive, and whether people agree with the decisions of which way the club go in terms of choosing a manager, choosing whether Martin's going to stay on. Everybody just needs to sort of make a decision, look ahead until the end of the season, and think short term. And think short term. I know new managers want to come in and sort of everybody has this outlook on building and progress, and things will take time. I don't think Celtic can think like that this season. It needs to be a short term fix. Win the league, however they win the league, and then at the end of the season try and breathe again. I mean, there's nothing to suggest as good as the domestic form has been, but there's nothing to suggest to me that Celtic will not have other slip-ups along the way. I'm absolutely sure that will be the case, because you just have to look at there are sides in the top flight who we saw Celtic lose to Dundee, for example. And Rangers, Dundee didn't put up a fight against Rangers, really. It was so one-sided, the game. But I still think Celtic are vulnerable this season, and that's the worry, and that'll be the worry for Martin. He will know that, and Craig touched on the volume of games and the intensity coming thick and fast, and it's a difficult job at this moment in time. But he's done fine domestically, but Europe looks like it's going to be a struggle.
I know I asked you this last night, Swanee, but Chris, would you still make Celtic favourites as we sit here right now to win the league?
No, I wouldn't. I think it's an arms race. It's all about January, and I think you've got Hearts. Everyone talks about Jamestown analytics and them getting on the right side of recruitment, and they have in many respects. I suppose now with Hearts, point against St Mirren, okay. In Paisley, not the worst point, but with slipping up against Dundee United, who have proven they're capable, I think everybody thinking, well, here we go. Hearts are sort of feeling the squeak and what have you. But if Tony Bloom, pulls a few blinders in January, and Celtic somehow stumble again, and Rangers, I'm sure that Danny Roll is. I mean, I don't know what he's thinking about their sort of centre forward position, but he chops and changes so much. It'll be interesting to see how many players he brings in, and I mean, I still think that there's a possibility that Rangers can win the league. I mean, they're hanging on in there. It just depends whether Hearts absolutely crumble, but Hearts don't have European football to contend with. I think that's an enormous advantage, but I think it's all about who wins the sort of arms race in January, who will win the league.
Can't really disagree with that, Swanee, can you? I mean, it's that January, as every week that goes by, is looking like so much more crucial to Celtic, Hearts, Rangers, a lot of team seasons.
Yeah, I would disagree with Chris in the fact I think Celtic still are favourites. I know they have massive problems, but I think they've got enough bodies in there that have been over the course that would give them the mentality advantage.
Massive injuries, though, Swanee. I mean, Alistair Johnson, no Jota, Carter Vickers out, and at the moment, getting through domestically. But I mean, there's a hell of a lot of pressure on certain players to stay fit. I mean, Liam Scales for Celtic now, and I know he gets flack. There's a lot of Celtic fans give him flack for some of his passing at times. But when you think set up against Celtic domestically, and they will see Celtic's vulnerability from set pieces. You need people who are willing to go and head the ball and be dominant.
I'll tell you something, Chris. I don't want to butt in, but just to strengthen your point, probably slipped under the radar for a lot of people on Sunday's game because Sunday's game looked so comfortable for Celtic. But at 2-0, Kilmarnock's manager Stuart Kettlewell through, Dacker's on, the big guys completely changed the attack. It was only a very brief spell, 2-3 minutes, where they hurled 2 or 3 long throws into the box. A couple of crosses came in, really dangerous. Scales was the one that dealt with them all. He was the one that won the first contact every time, and just and that was it. That was it, fizzled out. But if Kilmarnock could have scored a goal there and made it 2-1, all of a sudden the stadium's ramped with nerves. So I'm just kind of backing up Chris's point there. Like, sometimes he does a lot of unseen stuff, not unseen, but people just forget about it. But that was quite important what he did on Sunday.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know whether you feel the same way, guys. As much as Austin Trusty's come in and impressed, I think we have seen certainly last season him get roughed up.
You wouldn't be 100% sure, would you?
No,
at all times. Yeah.
And then then you look at the Simpson, the lesser spotted Simpson Pusey, coming in maybe at right back. Maybe that's Martin thinking, well, bit of size there as well. Where Celtic physically are not the biggest team, and that certainly, whether people like it or not, that certainly is something where I have great concerns about Celtic's physicality.
You mentioned injuries there, Chris, as well, and obviously we know Celtic are really hamstrung, pardon the pun, by injuries at the moment. Another one at the weekend was Marcello Sirachi. Swanee and I were talking last night, and I was going on about how I think Sirachi's a brilliant player. I think he's been a brilliant find for Celtic. I'd like to think, regardless of the managerial situation, there's someone in the background looking into perhaps a permanent deal for him at Celtic. The reason why I'm bringing him up is because obviously Kieran Tierney come on from and scored at the weekend, a really good goal. If Celtic were starting a cup final tomorrow, though, Chris, who would be your first choice left back? Who would you put in there if everyone was fit?
Well, as Sirachi isn't. Well, I'm glad you said as everyone's fit. Because,
when I asked Swanee last night, I forgot to say that.
Yeah. So no, it's interesting because I think most people feel the same way, that Kieran Tierney quite clearly hasn't been the same since he's returned to Celtic. Whether there's something psychological in there, I'm sure there is, and you see with his reaction to scoring the goal, there was sort of elements of frustration coming out, but he hasn't been the same. I think Celtic, I always felt that Sirachi, hasn't had. We need to see him over a longer period. I know you're really excited about him, Daniel, which is fine. But I think he can play that sort of inverted role, which Kieran Tierney, with respect, clearly can't. And he can give Celtic, maybe better balance on that left-hand side. And that ability to play that role, I think, gives him the edge over Tierney. But I always think with Tierney, whatever people think of him, and I think many people sort of feel the same way and sort of feel a bit sorry for him the way it's gone since he's come back. But he is a determined character. He is a determined figure. He's a good type, and I'm sure that he would have felt maybe an element of humiliation that he's coming back and he's sitting on the bench in a struggling team. But I do think that he's one who will not chuck the towel in, will fight and scrap. And, there's a player in there. We know there's a player in there. I'm just, I think if we're talking about styles of player, though, I think Sirachi would be is a better fit for this Celtic team right now, but we don't know how long he's going to be out for. Maybe he'll have a miraculous recovery like Arne Engels did.
Maybe. That brings us, Swanee, to in our left back chat to Andy Robertson. It's a story that we've covered a little bit on Record Sport Online. I think I'm right in saying he's out of contract at the end of the season with Liverpool. I know he was previously with Atletico Madrid last summer, didn't move, and he was out of the Liverpool team recently, but he started the last few games when they've been struggling, and he started a couple of the wins recently. Is he someone, no, he's a massive Celtic fan, but is he someone that Celtic could perhaps look at to bring in perhaps in a pre-contract for next summer?
If you're asking me, should Celtic be looking at the prospect of getting Andy Robertson if there's an opportunity, then absolutely. I mean, it's absolutely top-class football, but there's so many moving parts to that. I mean, in terms of there would be other clubs interested in a guy of that ability if he's running out of contract. Obviously, there'd be the financial side of it, and obviously highly paid at Liverpool. I don't know what the situation, would be one for Andy himself, I guess. But if you're just asking me in terms of a footballer, outstanding footballer. If you can get him on a free transfer, if you can get the personal terms all sorted and all that, then absolutely Celtic should be looking at it. So yeah, that's quite a simple answer to the question, to be honest with you. And I see no drawback for any club signing Andy Robertson, to be perfectly honest with you. Listen, okay, I caveat that. Maybe not the absolute cream of Europe at this stage of his career, but you know what I'm getting at, don't you? I think 70% of the English Premier League would happily take Andy Robertson. And plenty of other clubs across Europe as well. So should Celtic be looking at a guy like that if he's within bounds? 100%.
Don't get me wrong. I love Andy Robertson. I think he's a fantastic player.
Don't say it, Daniel.
I think he's been one of the best left backs in Europe. For the best part of the last decade?
It's going to be a massive but.
However, he turns 32 in March. Kieran Tierney's come back, and again, I love Kieran Tierney, but there's been a little bit of a question mark over him. I just don't know, would it be the wisest signing, Chris? Or am I just being stupid? Your eyes tell me.
I would never call you stupid, Daniel. I think you're being a bit silly here.
Okay.
No, I mean, Craig is right. Look, what you're looking at his physical condition. I mean, what's happened to him at Liverpool? Arne Slot brought Kerkez in to replace him. What's happened what happened at the weekend? Kerkez was the surefire starter at the start of the season. Spent a fortune on him. And all of a sudden at the weekend, Manchester City, Andy Robertson's back in the team. And I suspect he'll get a lot more game time at Liverpool. And you only have to look you're going on about his age. I think it's different to Kieran Tierney. Kieran Tierney has, had injuries before he left Celtic.
Yeah,
didn't play loads of football at Arsenal, and talked about maybe psychologically there's sort of something there where he has that doubt, he struggled to finish games. Maybe he'll come back and and hit the heights which he has. But I think Andy Robertson's different to Kieran Tierney. If his levels of fitness are there, and you only have to look at players in the Premier League like Granit Xhaka, who's I think is a year older, Casemiro, players like that.
Yeah.
Robertson has that experience and has that quality and has that know-how. So I think at 32 he could stroll back to Scotland, and I'm not saying that he will necessarily find it easy all the time, but it is too much quality for if he came available. I mean, Celtic would be daft not to take him in.
He spoke about it so much that I can kind of see it happening. He's a massive Celtic fan, and maybe now or never. As I say, he turns 32 in March. Is it something you could see happening, guys? Is it something, or am I just going with the speculation? Or
I don't think anybody necessarily thought Tierney would happen. I think I was one at the time. I mean, I get so many things wrong, Daniel, Craig. I mean, I'll say it before you do. But I think I was one at the time who thought Tierney might hang around down in the Premier League, for go to another club. I don't know, a Crystal Palace or Brighton or Brentford or whoever, and give it a go down there. But I sort of really welcomed and was excited about the signing of Kieran Tierney. But it's been tough for him. But you got a player who's I know Liverpool are having a rank rotten season at this moment in time, but you've got a player who was discarded by the manager who's just come into the team and looks like he's going to play ahead of, how much was Kerkez? 60 odd million, whatever he was.
Something like that, yeah.
Yeah. So you get an opportunity for a player to come back, and he doesn't seem the type of guy to me who would just want to come back and take a wage and finish playing for his boyhood club. He's always seemed a pretty determined type of guy, and that's why he's achieved what he's achieved.
Fair point. And I think that's the perfect note for us to end the Record Celtic podcast on. I say, I mentioned at the start of the show, it's obviously International Week. Swan, is it busy for you? You're not going to any of the Scotland games, are you?
No, I'm off.
Okay.
You don't support Scotland?
I'm off. No, I'm off on holiday. I'm not covering the games. I will be
nice.
watching. I'm praying that Scotland make it through.
Yeah, Chris,
You could
actually,
be the difference, Swanee. You could be that fan who makes the difference. Think about cancelling your holiday.
I think that's a fair point. I think you should consider that, Swanee.
I'm racing. I'm not cancelling that.
Chris, how about yourself? Is it still as busy as ever in the international break? Yeah.
No, not really. No, just
Okay,
my international career doesn't allow me to, to comment too much. But no, it's nice to get a few days off, Daniel.
Yeah, lovely.
He's an expert at filling the time in these periods.
Yeah, that's nice and nice to get a few days off and listen to the hotline.
There you go. Absolutely.
That's what I do.
Good advice for anyone else watching.
Going anywhere nice, Chris?
Maybe.
Okay.
Actually,
I know it's the Celtic podcast, but do you think Scotland will get to the World Cup, Chris?
But this is the Celtic podcast, Daniel. I
I
don't want that.
That's true.
I don't want to joan at Scotland. I hope so.
Excellent. That's a perfect answer, I think. Thank you so much for everyone listening at home. We'll be back next week with another Record Celtic podcast. Swanee, Chris, it's always an absolute pleasure.
Thank you, Daniel.
Thank you. Thanks, Daniel.
And we'll be back next week. Thanks for listening.